We continue with part 2 of the story, but if you have not watched the first part, then check under the video description for the part 1 so that you will understand the story clearly. Now let's get started. The following morning, Lerato woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside her window, their songs a cruel reminder of the normalcy that seemed so far removed from her life. She rolled over in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the previous day's events still hanging over her like a dark cloud. It felt impossible to escape the crushing thoughts that consumed her. She had spent the night tossing and turning, her mind spinning with the same questions over and over. What now? What do I do with this pain? Can I ever forgive them? Should I even try? Her phone buzzed again, and with a sigh, she grabbed it off the bedside table. It was another message from Zinhle. Zinhle. Please, Lerato, I know you're hurt, but you deserve to know the full story. I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. Can we meet? I need to explain everything. Lerato stared at the screen, the words blurring as her emotions surged. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but it was never this hard. How could Zinhle have the nerve to ask for a meeting after everything she had done? And yet, there was a part of her that longed for closure, for answers. She couldn't move forward without them. But was she ready to face her betrayer? Was she ready to listen to Zinhle's explanations, knowing full well that her heart was still raw, still broken? Lerato tossed her phone onto the bed and stood up, walking to the window. The early morning sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the darkness in her heart. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. You need to make a decision. Do you want to keep running from this, or do you want to move forward? It was true. She couldn't keep hiding forever. She had to confront the situation, no matter how much it hurt. But the question was, how? What was the right decision? She had always prided herself on being strong, on standing up for what was right. But this was different. This was a betrayal so deep, so painful, that it felt like her foundation had been ripped out from beneath her. Her relationship with Zinhle, her friendship with Tabo. How could they be rebuilt after this? Lerato felt a wave of frustration. She wanted to scream, to shout at the unfairness of it all, but she knew that wouldn't help. She needed to process, to make sense of the chaos in her mind. With a resigned sigh, she picked up her phone again and typed a quick response to Zinhle. Lerato, I'll meet you. But know this. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I need answers. Don't waste my time. Her fingers trembled slightly as she hit send, and for a moment she just stared at the screen. She wasn't sure if she was doing the right thing, but the truth was, she couldn't keep running from it. Zinhle had already broken her trust, but maybe, just maybe, there was a way to salvage some form of closure. The decision made, Lerato felt the weight of it lift just slightly off her chest. She still didn't know what would come from this meeting, but it was a step toward something, even if that something was just understanding. Later that afternoon, Lerato arrived at the cafe where she had agreed to meet Zinhle. Her heart pounded in her chest as she walked inside, her eyes scanning the room. Zinhle was already seated by the window, nervously tapping her fingers on the table. She looked up as Lerato approached, her face a mixture of guilt and desperation. Lerato took a deep breath and sat down across from her. The silence between them felt thick and heavy, like an unspoken apology that neither of them knew how to deliver. Finally Zinhle spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Lerato, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to happen. Lerato's eyes flashed with anger, but she held herself in check. You didn't want it to happen. Really? 'Cause it sure feels like you did. You knew exactly what you were doing. You both betrayed me, Zinhle. How could you? Tears welled up in Zinhle's eyes, and she reached for Lerato's hand. I never meant to hurt you. I was confused and it was a mistake, a huge mistake. I never thought I could be that person, but it happened. I was wrong and I'm so sorry. Lerato pulled her hand away sharply. I don't know if that's enough. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay. You've hurt me in a way I can't even begin to explain. Do you even understand how much this has shattered me? Zinhle nodded, her face crumpling with emotion. I do understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right now or ever, but please just let me explain. Tabo, we got caught up in something we shouldn't have. I never meant to fall for him, it just happened. Lerato's mind was reeling. This wasn't the answer she had expected, but it didn't make the pain go away. And you thought this was something I could ever understand? That I could ever forgive, she whispered. Zinhle lowered her head, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I don't know if you can forgive me, Lerato. But I need you to know that I never wanted to lose you. I made a terrible mistake, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. Lerato's heart clenched. She had come here expecting to find answers, but now she was only more confused than ever. The anger, the hurt, they were still there, but there was also something else, something deeper. Was this the end of their friendship, or was there a way forward? The silence between them grew again, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Lerato didn't know what to say. Tabo stood at Lerato's doorstep, his heart pounding as he rehearsed his words. It had been weeks since the disastrous wedding day, and not a moment had passed without him replaying his betrayal. The weight of his actions pressed heavily on his chest, but he clung to the hope that Lerato might forgive him. When Lerato finally opened the door, her face was a mix of surprise and apprehension. What are you doing here, Tabo? She asked, her voice cold yet trembling with the emotions she tried to suppress. I came to apologize, Lerato. I know I hurt you deeply, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm here to ask for it anyway, he said, his voice cracking. He went on to explain how he had been blinded by Zinhle's deceit and his own insecurities. He admitted to his selfishness and begged for a second chance. Lerato listened in silence, her heart warring between the love she once felt and the pain that now consumed her. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. Tabo, she began, her voice trembling. What you did shattered me. You betrayed my trust in a way I never thought possible. How do I forgive that? Tabo fell to his knees, pleading. Please, Lerato. I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worthy of your forgiveness. But Lerato shook her head. I don't know if I can forgive you. My heart is too broken, and I need time to heal. With that, she closed the door, leaving Tabo outside, consumed by regret. As Tabo walked away, Zinhle watched from a distance, her lips curling into a sly smile. She knew this was her moment to strike. Later that evening, she approached Tabo under the guise of offering comfort. You deserve someone who sees your worth, Tabo, she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. You've changed. I'm not the person I used to be, and I want to help you heal. Tabo, desperate for solace and still raw from Lerato's rejection, began to believe Zinhle's words. He convinced himself that perhaps a future with her was his only option. Weeks later, Tabo and Zinhle were married in a small ceremony, with Zinhle flashing a victorious smile as she vowed to be his partner for life. Unbeknownst to Tabo, Zinhle's promises were laced with ulterior motives. As Lerato watched from afar, she struggled to make sense of her emotions: pain, betrayal, and a deep sense of loss. Little did Tabo know, he was stepping into a trap that would change his life forever. Zinhle's transformation into the perfect wife was short-lived. Within months, her true intentions began to surface. She persuaded Tabo to give her control over their finances, claiming it would help her manage the household more effectively. Trusting her, Tabo signed over access to his accounts, unaware that Zinhle had already begun funneling money into her personal accounts. Meanwhile, their family grew with the birth of their son, Sayabonga, and daughter, Nomvula. To the outside world, they appeared to be a happy family. But inside their home, Tabo started to notice Zinhle's growing distance. She spent lavishly on herself, neglected their children, and dismissed Tabo's concerns with sharp words and manipulation. One evening, Tabo stumbled upon suspicious bank statements. When he confronted Zinhle, she turned the argument against him, accusing him of being ungrateful for her sacrifices. I've done everything for this family, Tabo. If you don't trust me, maybe I should take the kids and leave, she yelled, storming out of the room. Tabo, torn between his love for his children and his growing suspicions, chose to stay silent. But deep down, he felt the walls of his marriage closing in on him. Zinhle, emboldened by Tabo's reluctance to confront her, began laying the groundwork for her ultimate betrayal. She secretly contacted a lawyer and started the process of filing for divorce. Her plan was to claim Tabo was a danger to their children, ensuring she would gain full custody along with a significant portion of his assets. When the papers were served, Tabo was blindsided. "What is this, Zinhle? After everything I've done for you," he demanded, his voice shaking. Zinhle's response was icy. "This is what's best for me and the kids, Tabo. You'll understand one day." Heartbroken and powerless, Tabo watched as Zinhle walked away with their children and the majority of his wealth. Alone in his empty house, he realized too late the cost of his decisions. Zinhle, on the other hand, wasted no time. Weeks later, she married Mandlenkosi Dlamini, a billionaire known for his extravagant lifestyle. With Tabo's money and her new husband's wealth, Zinhle basked in luxury, oblivious to the storm brewing in her new life. Zinhle's marriage to Mandlenkosi Dlamini was everything she dreamed of. On the surface, the sprawling mansion, designer clothes, and expensive vacations made her feel invincible. She paraded her new life on social media, showcasing the wealth she now controlled. Yet behind the filters and luxury, cracks in her perfect world began to show. Mandlenkosi, though charming in public, was controlling and ruthless in private. His sharp tongue and dismissive demeanor quickly revealed his true nature. Zinhle found herself walking on eggshells, terrified of triggering his temper. "You're nothing without me," he would often remind her, his voice laced with disdain. Zinhle tried to ignore his behavior, focusing instead on the lifestyle he provided. Her children, Sayabonga and Nomvula, were sent to the most prestigious schools, but Zinhle's obsession with appearances left them feeling neglected. They rarely saw their mother, who was consumed with maintaining her social image and appeasing her demanding husband. Meanwhile, Mandlenkosi's business dealings came under scrutiny. Rumors of fraudulent activities began circulating in high society. Zinhle dismissed the whispers, convinced that her husband was untouchable. But her world came crashing down when law enforcement raided their home one fateful morning. Mandlenkosi was arrested on charges of fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. The government seized all his assets, leaving Zinhle and her children with nothing. The media frenzy that followed was relentless, and Zinhle became the target of public ridicule. "Gold digger gets what she deserves," read one headline. Another called her the queen of scandal. With her husband behind bars and her wealth stripped away, Zinhle faced a harsh reality. Her so-called friends abandoned her, and her lavish lifestyle dissolved overnight. Left with no money, no home, and no support system, she moved into a modest apartment in Johannesburg, struggling to make ends meet. Zinhle's children, once accustomed to privilege, now faced the challenges of a humble life. Sayabonga and Nomvula resented their mother for the choices that had led them to this point. Zinhle, consumed by regret, tried to repair her relationship with them, but the wounds ran deep. As the days turned into months, Zinhle began to reflect on her past. She realized how her greed and deceit had cost her everything: her family, her reputation, and her peace. In her solitude, she decided to use her story as a cautionary tale. Zinhle started giving talks in local communities, sharing her journey from riches to rags. "I wanted it all, and I lost it all," she would tell her audience. Her vulnerability resonated with many, and she slowly began to rebuild her life through her advocacy work. But as Zinhle tried to find redemption, her thoughts often drifted to Tabo, the man she had wronged. She wondered if he had found happiness, or if he was still grappling with the pain she had caused. Tabo's life had become a quiet routine. After Zinhle left him, he sank into a deep depression, plagued by feelings of failure and loneliness. His once thriving business faltered, and his home felt like a hollow shell. One day, while sitting in his dimly lit living room, Tabo found himself staring at a photograph of Lerato. Her smile, so full of warmth and love, stirred something within him. He realized that he had to make peace with his past. Determined to reconnect with Lerato, Tabo began searching for her. He visited places they used to frequent and asked mutual friends if they knew where she was. After weeks of searching, he finally found her in Durban. When Tabo saw Lerato, his heart skipped a beat. She was as beautiful as he remembered, but there was a newfound confidence in her demeanor. She had moved on and was now married to a kind and loving man named Sifo. Lerato greeted Tabo politely but cautiously. "What brings you here, Tabo?" she asked, her tone measured. "I came to apologize," Tabo said earnestly. "Not to ask for anything but to tell you that I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better, and I failed you." Lerato listened, her eyes softening as Tabo spoke. "I've forgiven you, Tabo," she said after a pause. "Not for you but for myself. Holding on to anger only weighed me down. But my life has moved on and I'm happy now." Tabo nodded, his heart heavy yet relieved. "I'm glad you found happiness, Lerato. You deserve it." As he walked away, Tabo felt a strange sense of closure. He realized that forgiveness didn't always mean reconciliation, and sometimes moving on was the greatest act of love. Back in Johannesburg, Tabo decided to focus on rebuilding his life. He poured his energy into his business, slowly regaining his footing. He also began volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring young men and sharing his story of mistakes and lessons learned. Through his work, Tabo found a renewed sense of purpose. Though he would always carry the scars of his past, he was determined to use his experiences to help others avoid the same pitfalls. Zinhle's once glamorous life seemed like a distant memory. After Mandlenkosi's arrest, she faced the harsh reality of starting over with nothing. The luxurious parties, designer clothes, and grand mansion were gone, replaced by a small apartment and a wardrobe of second-hand clothes. Her children, Sayabonga and Nomvula, struggled to adjust to their new life. They resented the abrupt change and often clashed with Zinhle, who was trying to piece together what remained of her shattered world. Zinhle's loneliness grew unbearable. The friends who once surrounded her had disappeared. The socialite she used to laugh with no longer answered her calls, and the community regarded her with a mix of pity and scorn. Gossip about her downfall spread like wildfire. One day, as Zinhle scrolled through her phone, she stumbled upon a news article about Tabo. The piece highlighted his work at the local youth center, where he was mentoring young people and sharing his life lessons. Seeing his image stirred emotions she hadn't felt in years: regret, guilt, and a deep sense of loss. "I had it all," she thought, "and I threw it away." Zinhle decided to attend one of Tabo's community talks, sitting quietly at the back of the room. As she listened to him speak about the importance of integrity, family, and making amends, she felt a lump rise in her throat. He spoke with such sincerity and warmth, qualities she had taken for granted. After the session, Zinhle approached Tabo cautiously. "Tabo," she said, her voice trembling, "it's been a long time." Tabo turned, his expression unreadable. "Zinhle," he said, his tone calm but distant. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to see you," she admitted. "To apologize for everything I did. I ruined your life, and I regret it every day." Tabo studied her for a moment before replying. "I appreciate your apology, Zinhle, but the damage has been done. I've moved on and I hope you can too." Zinhle nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She had hoped for forgiveness, but she realized that some wounds took more than an apology to heal. Years passed, and Zinhle's life continued to evolve. After her encounter with Tabo, she threw herself into her advocacy work. She traveled to schools and community centers, sharing her story with anyone willing to listen. "I let greed and selfishness destroy my life," she would tell her audiences. "I lost everything because I couldn't see what truly mattered." Her talks gained traction, and Zinhle became a sought-after speaker. Her message resonated with many, especially young women who admired her honesty and courage to face her mistakes. Meanwhile, Tabo had found a new sense of peace. His mentorship at the youth center blossomed into a full-fledged program, providing guidance and opportunities to young people in Johannesburg. Though he had been deeply hurt by Zinhle's betrayal and Lerato's moving on, he chose to focus on the positive changes in his life. One day, Zinhle was invited to speak at an event in Johannesburg, where Tabo was also scheduled to give a keynote address. When they crossed paths backstage, there was an air of mutual respect between them. "You've come a long way," Tabo said with a small smile. "So have you," Zinhle replied, her tone earnest. As they took the stage, the crowd listened intently to their stories of failure, redemption, and resilience. Both Zinhle and Tabo had learned that life wasn't about erasing mistakes but about growing from them. Zinhle's children, now teenagers, watched from the audience. Sayabonga and Nomvula had come to understand their mother's journey and were proud of her efforts to rebuild their lives. In the end, Zinhle and Tabo's paths diverged, but their stories remained intertwined, a reminder of the consequences of choices and the power of redemption. The tale of Zinhle's rise, fall, and eventual redemption became a lesson for the community. Her vulnerability and honesty inspired others to reflect on their own lives, proving that even the deepest scars could heal with time and effort. The story of Tabo and Zinhle became a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the human capacity for change, leaving a lasting impact on everyone who heard it.